All right, man, peace. So as those of us who follow the NBA know very well, the Boston Celtics have been prognosticated to be the odds-on favorite to represent the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals this year. But the question remains, is it a possibility that they will fall short, that they will not live up to expectations? Well, Stephen A. Smith seems to believe so, as does Max Kellerman. So, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
2019, the year of the Mean Green Machine. Last year, the Celtics made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals, and that was without Gordon Hayward or Kyrie Irving. So this season, expectations are sky high for the Celtics as they get...
That's why, once again, that's how you know that one of the players in the NBA that is under a great deal of pressure, quote unquote, is Kyrie Irving. Because what runs hand in hand with expectations? The pressure to fulfill those expectations.
Get set to host the 76ers in Beantown tonight. Boston took care of Philly in the East semis by an impressive 4-1 margin last season. Many consider the Celtics one of the only teams that could dethrone the Warriors. Danny Ainge has the team obviously loaded. Stephen A., barring any more injuries, can the Celtics screw this up in any way?
They could, believe it or not, because here's why. Chemistry matters. I don't believe they will. I believe they're going to the finals, barring injury. But in the same breath, we have to understand that Gordon Hayward, Kyrie Irving, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, these guys, you only got one basketball.
Thank you, sir. And I've been saying that for a while now. I did a video touching on this sentiment in my last batch of videos, and all the Boston Celtics fans, they got upset with me. Oh, I normally agree with you, but I have to say you're wrong about this one. There's no way that this could happen. Let me say this. You guys can get as upset about it as you want. The Boston Celtics, they remind me a lot of the late 90s, early 2000s Portland Trail Blazers. A team that was filled with good to very good players. Did not have one truly transcendent player. That team had Steve Smith and Scottie Pippen and Rasheed Wallace, Bonzi Wells, Arvydas Sabonis, so on and so forth. That team took the Kobe Shaq Lakers to 7 games in 2000 and really should have won that series. But Game 7 in LA, they came up short. It is what it is. Point being is, and I think also, I believe they also had a series against the Mavericks where they were down 0-3 and came back to tie the series. I'm trying to remember if that was the next year or not. But there was a series that Portland had where they were down 0-3 and won the next 3 games and lost Game 7 on the road. That Portland Trailblazers team, they were all over the place. They were known as the Jailblazers. But this Boston team reminds me of them because they're built along that same mold where they can go 2 deep at every position. And at point guard, they go 3 deep because Marcus Smart can also play the point. So you have Kyrie, Terry Rozier, and Marcus Smart. There are only so many minutes to go around. So this season is highly pressurized for the Boston Celtics. People look at the team and they say, look at all of our young talent. You have to understand something. After this season, these guys are only going to tolerate sharing minutes with another player for this season. They're going to want to play more than 27, 28 minutes a game. The only guys who are going to be getting consistently more than 30 minutes per game is going to be Kyrie and Jason Tatum and maybe Al Horford. All these other guys are going to be vacillating somewhere between that 25 to 32 minute mark at the most because they're just too deep. And that can lead to some issues in the locker room, especially if they hit a low bump in the regular season. I think that Kyrie Irving was prudent enough to understand this, and that's why he called his teammates to his home and informed them that he will be coming back. I think that he did that to try to smother any attempt by the media to cause dissension in their ranks or any feeling that one of their team members was not all in. So that was very shrewd on Kyrie Irving's part. But still, there is such a thing as having too much talent on your team. There really is. Sometimes when you look at the history of the NBA, it's better to have 2 great players, 1 good one, and then a bunch of role players who just do their job. Now, sometimes, like with the Showtime Lakers, they had 2 all-time great players, another great player in James Worthy, a very good to borderline great player in his prime or at his best in Byron Scott, and then a bunch of role players who also form a high draft pick. So they were a super team. Same thing with the Celtics. But this team with the Boston Celtics today, I see a lot of good to very good players and only one great player, that being Kyrie. So could there be a possibility for dissension? I believe so. I've been saying it for a long time. And finally, Stephen A. Smith is starting to figure this out as well. And Charles Barkley also mentioned it a week or so ago.
And Kyrie Irving, you know, once upon a time, he was the face of the franchise, and he is a star. He is something special.
Well, he's a superstar. He's a lower-level superstar. And the reason why I say that is because he's shown that he can dominate and come through in the biggest stages and with the brightest lights.
But I got news for everybody. Jason Tatum put the basketball world on notice. He has arrived. He's not coming. He's arrived.
Look, Jason Tatum is coming, but I just think that the media is starting to coronate him a little bit too early. The brother's 20 years old. He averaged about 14 points a game last year in the regular season. In the playoffs with no Kyrie and Gordon, he averaged about 18 points a game in the playoffs. They're acting like this dude is Kevin Durant or something like that. And I like Jason Tatum a lot. He has a very smooth game, great face-up game. He worked with Kobe Bryant in the offseason. Let's pump the brakes just a little bit.
It is that special, and I'm a huge fan of Jaylen Brown. Huge fan of Jaylen Brown. But you know something, as crazy as it sounds? You took care of Marcus Smart, and I'm very happy about that because he deserves it. I don't know how Danny Ainge is going to do it, but to me, a guy like Terry Rozier, he has to go at some point because you can't take care of him the way he deserves. Because
of course, and that's why he's going to be a part of the package, along with Gordon Hayward, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, and a first-round draft pick, maybe even 2 first-round draft picks. Trade them to New Orleans for Anthony Davis and maybe Drew Holiday. Watch for that.
Because Kyrie Irving is there. Terry Rozier is special. Terry Rozier could be on my team any day as well. And
watch for that if New Orleans at some point in the season falls off.
I look at the comment. To me, you can mess it up by disrupting the chemistry because then, and I'm not saying he's going to because Danny Ainge has done a brilliant job as an executive, Max, which you articulate on many, many occasions. Here's the issue with the Boston Celtics. You got to take care of somebody like a Rozier, right? Or
not necessarily, because I don't think that they will unless Kyrie Irving decides to depart. They're going to try to get those popping right away because they can't fuck around with that because if they can't bring back Kyrie, they're going to try to bring back Rozier.
Or let him go. The problem is you don't want to let him go because you're trying to win a championship. And you need a guy like that coming off the bench. Not to mention Kyrie's suspect past injury-wise. You know, you're covered at so many different positions, particularly the forward spot and the point guard spot. You got a multitude of guys that can do what they do. But to me, it's a chemistry issue.
Those old Trailblazers, a.k.a. Jailblazers, they also had Damon Stoudemire at point. That team has so many good players. The problem is, once again, they had no great players. And that's why they remind me so much of this current Boston Celtics team. I can see them truly taking the Golden State Warriors to the limit, to the maximum. But the question is, when that time period comes, is Kyrie going to be able to take the game over along with Jason Tatum?
And it's an ego issue, making sure everybody is in check and understand the objective here is a championship. We don't care who gets the shine. We don't care who gets the job done. It could be any given person on any given night. This is truly one of those important components that they have to have because I do think it would be required, obviously, to come out of the East and definitely to beat Golden State. That's it. They don't have to make any moves.
I do not think Boston.
I disagree with that, Stephen A. Smith. I do think that they need to make some moves. Because as Max Kellerman is most likely about to say, there's no guarantee that they're going to get past the Toronto Raptors. They need some star power. And if they're able to pull the trigger and have that move greenlit that I'm an advocate for, that being moving Terry Rozier, Jaylen Brown, Gordon Hayward, and Al Horford, and a first-round draft pick, or maybe even 2 first-round draft picks for Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday, they better make that happen. Because Anthony Davis will give them that transcendent talent that they need. They'll still have Jason Tatum. They'll still have Kyrie. And they'll be ready.
I think Boston can screw this up. That's not saying that they definitely get to the finals, because that's how much respect I have for the Raptors. And when you talk about great GMs or great executives, because president of basketball operations, the guys who call the shots,
pretty damn good.
The 2 best are Danny Ainge and Masai Ujiri, I think, in that order in basketball. And so lo and behold, look at those.
I'm not quite sure I agree with that, Max Kellerman. I think that you have to give some level of honorary notice to the GM out there with the Oklahoma City Thunder, Sam Presti.
those two squads. I want to start with the Celtics. The injuries kind of happened in a perfect way for them.
Danny Ainge, for those of you brothers out there who were too young to have seen him play, Danny Ainge was one of the scrappiest players in the history of the NBA, certainly in the modern era of the NBA. He would fight anybody. He would fight anybody. He would get into it with anybody. He once bit somebody on the leg. Who was it that he bit? Was it Tree Rollins? One of you brothers old enough to remember, you can correct me. I believe he bit Tree Rollins, but he was a great role player with the Boston Celtics back in the Larry Bird, Kevin McHale era of the 1980s.
Gordon Hayward's injury allowed for the development of Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They just got more minutes. And Kyrie for Rozier. That's really the guy who got to shine. So now they have a deep bench and starters who are ridiculous. Now, in terms of your point, chemistry, eventually, maybe this year, they run the offense through Jason Tatum, right? And Horford.
It's possible that they're going to run some half-court sets that are designed to get him the basketball, especially on the elbow, where he seems to like it.
Horford is maybe their best all-around player. They're just loaded. But what I saw from Kyrie last year was an unselfishness at the point guard position that I wasn't sure he could muster on a team that's supposed to be his team. And I anticipate in the moment of truth, if they need to make that transition to Tatum.
Once again, all Kyrie Irving ever wanted to do was play on a real team. That's all. He did not want to play on a team that was really just a vanity piece for one player, that being LeBron James. I'll never forget the snippet that I saw where a certain reporter stated that Tyronn Lue tried to approach Kyrie Irving in regards to the pace that the team was playing at. And Kyrie told him, "Why are you telling this to me for? Go tell it to that guy," meaning LeBron James, the guy who was in control of the offense. So that told me everything that I needed to know in regards to how Kyrie viewed LeBron and that situation in Cleveland.
Tatum being the focal point of the offense, that Kyrie's point guard instincts take over there, and his leadership instincts take over there. Go ahead.
No. What I want to say to you, I want to talk to you about Toronto for a quick second.
Good. That's where I was going. Good.
Anunoby, Siakam,
Yeah.
Van Vliet. I like all of those guys. At the end of the day, it's going to be Van Vliet or Kyle Lowry. Both of them can play. Mad respect for both of them. But they're miniature. Neither of them can guard Kyrie. I don't think anybody can guard Kyrie.
Well, let me say this. I'm not quite sure that Kyrie can guard Kyle Lowry, and I'm not a Kyle Lowry fan or aficionado at all. But Kyrie is not the best defensive player in the NBA, and that's putting it mildly.
No disrespect to them. But if for some reason you find yourself in a situation where Kyrie's not that guy, let's say, for example, you got Tatum and Jaylen and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and all of these guys. Boston is so long and athletic and an elite defensive team against three-point shots and what have you. Those miniature guards, I think, hurt you.
Look, there's no perfect team.
And Siakam and Anunoby are defenders.
Okay, let me.
Well, here's how I would counter that, Stephen A. Smith. When you have a player like a Kawhi Leonard who can not only guard his man, but who can also help defend, you put Kawhi Leonard on Jason Tatum. Automatically, Jason Tatum's numbers are going to be cut down markedly. And now you're going to put more pressure on Kyrie to be the man offensively. And that's exactly what you want, because no matter how explosive Kyrie is, he's only 6'1", maybe 6'1 and a half. And you have to hope that maybe you can wear him down over the course of a series if most of the offense is dependent on him. You're also going to have to depend on Siakam and Anunoby to do their job on Jaylen Brown. But Toronto matches up very well with the Boston Celtics defensively. They match up very well with them. The issue is that on the offensive end, Toronto may have their own issues scoring. And a lot of onus is going to be placed on Kawhi Leonard to come through in clutch moments. And presumably he's going to be guarded most likely by Jaylen Brown or by Jason Tatum, most likely by Jaylen Brown, because Jaylen Brown has a little bit more physique and he's a little bit more explosive as an athlete than Jason Tatum is.
Let me get
not scorers.
There's no perfect
and that's
team.
where my problem lies.
There's no perfect team, and you identified their Achilles heel.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure about that. The Golden State Warriors, once they get DeMarcus Cousins, they might be as perfect as you can get.
Okay.
Right? Lowry is still their guy, and if he were a bigger or slightly better player, you'd feel more confident. I agree with that.
Right.
I still think, look at all the projections, all the analytics types, like the Raptors to have the most wins in the conference, like all of them. None of them have Boston over Toronto. So then the question, and even if we agree with that, yeah, they're good defensively, they're a better regular season team. Like all Ujiri teams, they're very deep. They have a really deep bench. They can keep going. They're going to be really good defensively. When it comes down to it, the problem last year with the Raptors is they didn't have the best player on the floor. They didn't have the second best player on the floor.
I agree with you, sir. So many times, if you want to figure out or understand who is going to win an NBA playoff series, all you have to do is look at which team has 2 of the top 3 best players or 3 of the top 4 best players. And 99 times out of 100, that is a team that is going to win the series.
Lord, this year, they have the best player on the floor in Kawhi.
Here's what I want to say to you. It's no other way for me to slice this. I got to tell you something I've been dying to tell you. I don't feel the way about Kawhi that you do. Not offensively. I think that Kawhi Leonard is an elite player and a champion.
Let me say this, Stephen A. Smith. You can feel about Kawhi Leonard however the hell you want. If Kawhi Leonard is giving them 25 points per game, he is going to be not only the best player in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Boston Celtics, he's going to be the best player in the Eastern Conference, period. Because his defense is so elite that if he averages 25 or more points per game and, say, shoots 46+% from the field, he's going to be worth his weight in absolute gold.
I think far more of him defensively than I think of him offensively. I know statistically, numbers-wise, he's efficient. But I am telling you, when it's time and you take a ball and you say, here, take me to the promised land, he's not my guy.
Okay.
I don't feel that way about Kawhi.
Right, but how many guys have been like that in the history of the NBA, Stephen A. Smith? When you talk about take me to the promised land, I'm not talking about win this game for me, this regular season game. I'm talking about take me to the promised land. There have been maybe 10 guys like that in the history of the NBA.
Ask you
I really don't.
That never has. And by the way,
but I've always felt that way about Durant.
Right, that kind of...
Well, Durant is one of those guys. He's one of those guys in the history of the NBA that you can give him the basketball and say, take me to the promised land. And even with him, he had to be on a particular type of team to do it because he's not an alpha.
Kind of thinking was from a previous era. I'm not saying it doesn't still exist, but when you look at the Raptors last year, one of the problems was DeRozan and Larry start playing hero ball when otherwise that team shared the ball all game. Look at the San Antonio Spurs, who was...
Well, you know what? That was a major issue that the Toronto Raptors had, and that's one of the reasons why they moved DeMar DeRozan. You know, Masai Ujiri separating DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry, it reminds me of back like when you were in elementary school or maybe junior high school or high school, where you had a couple of dudes that when they were together, they would sit next to each other in class, and they would always start cutting up to the point where the teacher realized, I can't have these 2 guys next to each other because they're going to fuck up the classroom experience for everybody. So they had to sit separate. That's how DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry were. I knew that something was wrong with them, especially not even just in the playoffs, but even in the All-Star game last year when Steph Curry's team lost because that idiot Mike D'Antoni left Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan in the game in the clutch spot when they should have both been taken out the game. Neither one of those players are clutch. They're both good, so you have to team one of them with a clutch player. You can't have the both of them together because they're going to fuck it up for everybody.
Who was the offensive star that you really trusted, right? Was it Ginobili at the end when he was an old man? Was it Parker as an old man? Because that's who they had when they were still competing for championships with Kawhi as the best player.
Well, it was more of a group effort. Kawhi was the main guy, but whoever had the basketball and in clutch could take it with the Spurs. Oftentimes it was Ginobili, sometimes it was Parker. But of course, Kawhi was the main guy.
On the team.
But the problem with that, Max, is that you're talking as if we can expect Toronto's system to be inserted and implemented in a fashion that favors Kawhi similar to what San Antonio does. And I'm saying San Antonio for a reason. I can't expect Toronto to mirror that.
Look at the system Toronto ran last year. Just by DeRozan taking more threes, that threat was good enough to make them almost a 60-win team. Kawhi's going to be hitting those threes.
I agree. Just based off of what Max Kellerman is stating, which is mostly factual, I would expect the Toronto Raptors to be a 60-plus win team this season. I really would. just going off of how much better of an overall player Kawhi is and how much mentally stronger he is than DeMar DeRozan. I would say that the Toronto Raptors should win. I mean, barring major injury, they should win somewhere around 61, 62 games this year.
Celtics will be in the finals if I was a betting woman.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. We'll see how the season goes for both the Boston Celtics and the Toronto Raptors. So peace.